Okay, welcome back everyone to this part 4 of the flowcharts lesson, and in this part we're going to be looking at how different loops are represented with flowcharts. And what you'll notice is that the while loop, which is this one over here, and the for loop, which is this one over here, are pretty much the same thing when flowcharts are concerned. So if we were to convert both of these algorithms into a flowchart, we would have our start like this, then we would have our initial variable. So for this we would need a rectangle, and let's call it counter, which is going to be assigned to 0. And then we would have our next part, the decision, so something that is checked. So we say is counter less than 10. So notice that this decision is actually, or this check is checking both of these conditions. So with the while loop, this condition will be true as long as counter is less than 10, so that's up to 9. And for the for loop, the for loop will iterate all the way up to the number 9 as well. So this condition here is counter less than, this is the less than symbol, less than 10, matches both of the conditions for both of the loops. It will for the last loop as well, but it's the position where we put the decision shape that matters. So let's just do the while and the for loop first. So is counter less than 10? So if it's not, then we're going to just do that. If no, then the program is going to stop. But if it's a yes, like so, then what we're going to do is we're going to output the counter. So for that we're going to use a parallelogram or an input-output shape. So we're going to say output counter like this. So we can see it matches the instructions inside the for loop and the while loop. And then what we can do is we can increment the counter, and for that we would need a rectangle or a process box. So we say counter is assigned to counter plus 1. I'm just doing it like this because I'm running out of space. You guys can do it much more neater if you're doing it in paper, and try to restrict it to just one line. And then this, from this process box, we would have a line which would take us back to the decision to check whether the counter is still less than 10. If it is still less than 10, then we would again output the counter, increment the counter by 1. Now I know that this instruction here in pseudocode, we don't see it in the for loop, but it's inferred. So because it says counter assigned to 0 to 9, this keyword right here, 2, is telling us that the data, the number inside counter, will be incremented all the way to this number. You can have for loops which run in reverse or towards lower numbers. So we can have, for example, for I is assigned 9 to 0, and this 2 again will tell you that the data inside I will be decremented all the way up to 0, like so. Now, looking at this, we can see that before any actions are executed, before any instructions are executed, the condition is checked first. So this is what you call a pre-check type of loop. Okay, so these two loops over here, the while loop and the for loop, are pre-check, like that. Okay, what that means is that the condition is checked before any action is taken. So I wouldn't say a risk of this, but one of the reasons why this type of loop might get used is that you want the code inside of the loop to only be executed if the condition is true or false. Now, if we convert the do while loop, so this loop here is called a do while. So the way you would do this in flowchart is, again, you would have your start. Let me just split these two into different parts. So you'd have your start, then you would have your counter, because we have it in the program here. So we would have a rectangle, so we say counter. I'm just going to roughly write this because you can kind of see what I'm going to write is assigned to 0. Now, instead of having the condition here first, that is being checked, the decision, what you would have first is the action. So you would have your input output, so you'd have output like so, and you would have your counter here. Then what you would have is the increment, so you'd have your rectangle, so you'd have counter is being assigned to counter plus 1, the same as this one here. Then at the end of this you would have the check, so it's going to be the same check, is counter less than 10, like so. So if it's a no, then we're going to stop the program, but if it's a yes, then the program will repeat this action as well. Okay, so this is what you call a post check, like so. And the reason why this loop is used in programming is if you want the instructions to execute at least once, regardless of whether the condition is true or false. So you can kind of see in this section right here, there's nothing stopping this instruction from being executed. So this code, or these two lines of code, will definitely 100% be executed at least once before the condition is checked. Whereas in this program, in this algorithm up here, we can see that the only way for these two instructions, the same as here, so the only way for these two instructions to be executed is for this condition to be true. And if that's false, then these two conditions will not be executed even once. All right? So keep in mind when you are writing your algorithms which of these loops you would like to use, a post check or a pre-check.